It is your time for generational wealth. You are only going to get one opportunity, and this is the biggest opportunity of our lifetimes. Raoul Pal brings it home here. There are only going to be about 4 or 5 layer 1s that get mass adopted by financial institutions and the public, and we know XRP is going to be one of those chains. We also have some breaking news. Real-world assets on the XRP ledger just hit $4.8 billion. It is insane to see the explosion and growth happening right now. We also have new reports about RLUSD exploding over 200 million minted overnight. What is going on? I have the full update, so let us jump into this. All wealth compounds over time, and everybody desperate to trade it is going to mess it up. It is just the biggest opportunity we have ever been given. We have said here is the infrastructure, the substrate for all economic coordination for the digital age, and people are trading it like it is nothing, right? It is short-sighted. And that is what is becoming really obvious now, where this is all going, that you just have to keep participating. Buy a few high-quality, top-tier tokens that are proven. Layer 1s are preferable because they are not complicated. You can measure the economic activity. There are only 3 that really matter right now, though someone else may have a different view. You would not necessarily choose something like Hyperliquid because that is a specific use case token. Can it be in your portfolio? Yes. But simply to capture the infrastructure layer, you need 3 to 5 layer 1s, and then you go to the beach for 10 years and come back on your private jet. It is as simple as that, really. XRP, Solana, and Ethereum would be the top 3 suggestions. For a top 5, you would likely throw in Canton Network and then maybe XLM. You might have a different top 5, but those will be significantly impactful. Now, it is interesting timing as we are seeing all of this institutional Wall Street adoption of the XRP ledger. On July 13, 2023, Judge Annalisa Torres issued a landmark judgment in the SEC versus Ripple case, ruling that XRP was not a security. Fast forward nearly 3 years later, and on that exact same date, the DTCC tokenization service will begin its soft launch operations. That is truly incredible to see those dates lined up. History often repeats with dates. Global ETFs have broken over 1.4 billion XRP locked. It is starting to get exciting. Here in the United States, we are getting close to 900 million XRP locked up, but globally, we are almost at 1.5 billion XRP, and that number keeps growing. Real-world assets are having a hard time keeping up with how much value is being tokenized on the XRP ledger. The tracker shows 4.1 billion. But Luke Judges says we are now at $4.8 billion. That is just incredible to see. The real-world asset tracker cannot keep up. Even without that additional 700 million in tokenized value, the XRP ledger is already number 4 in the rankings when you include stable coins. We want to start targeting provenance here. They are at almost 18 billion, so we are going to need a lot more assets tokenized, but if we are able to pass provenance, Ethereum is just $1 billion away. We can really get to where we want to go, being that number 2 spot behind Canton. Most of this is in the repo market, just to be clear. We did see VanEck talk about their Rise of Corporate Chains report, which is a clear signal. The next wave of value capture is moving from legacy rails to tokenized business-built networks like Ripple and the XRP ledger. They stand out for payments, settlement, and compliance, and as all of these networks converge, here are the top chains being mentioned. You have the XRP ledger, Coinbase's chain, Provenance, Canton, Connexes by JP Morgan, and also the Robinhood chain. The reason this matters is that a major TradFi research house is explicitly framing Ripple, the XRP ledger, and Ripple's pending bank charter as core infrastructure in the coming corporate chain era, where value and fees get pulled off legacy rails and onto regulated business-built networks. That is exactly the thesis XRP holders have been betting on. This is a big deal because it validates XRP's role in regulated payments and settlement. It links Ripple's bank charter to future fee and value capture, and it signals to institutions that XRP infrastructure is becoming a safe and investable asset, not just something speculative. Now we are seeing some pretty remarkable numbers with RLUSD. The largest RLUSD mint in history just happened. $200 million was minted out of the RLUSD treasury in a single transaction. This is not routine. This is Ripple positioning for something big. The liquidity is being loaded. We also have some information from Jack McDonald on what could be going on with RLUSD, so let us learn about this together. Ripple is minting large chunks of RLUSD mainly to preload liquidity and inventory for institutional use, new venues, and on-ledger markets, not just to print money. Here is Jack McDonald, the SVP of RLUSD, talking about how stablecoins and XRP coexist inside Ripple's ecosystem, and this is something worth understanding clearly. So we spent a lot of time, as you might imagine, thinking about this. You can think of XRP, the token, as the native gas token on the XRP ledger in the same way that Bitcoin is to the Bitcoin ledger, or ETH is to the Ethereum ledger. Every activity that happens on the XRP ledger, every transaction, every movement of value, requires a gas token. It is significantly less expensive to do business or to have activity on the XRP ledger compared to Ethereum or other chains, but there is still a fraction of a penny gas token used to prevent spam on the ledger, and that is where XRP is used. That is the way it was designed. Any chain has a native token to it. The reality is, in the payments business, there are certain customers who are either precluded by doctrine, law, or common practice from touching crypto. So stablecoins have been adopted by some in payments. Ripple embraces that optionality for customers, and having both a stablecoin and XRP to be used as a bridge asset makes sense because it gives the customer choice. Every time a stablecoin is used on the ledger, behind the scenes, there is utility being driven for that native token. It is being used, it is just abstracted away when a stablecoin is involved, just like the RLUSD stablecoin is available on the Ethereum ledger as well. Ripple launched their own stablecoin because they saw where the market was going. They saw that legislation would be passed first for stablecoins, and they were already minting a significant share of what USDC was doing at the time. Why help a competitor when you can launch your own? And looking forward to the growth of RLUSD and the use cases that can be built around it, those use cases are going to be extensive, and of course it all leads to more XRP usage over time. Now, OSG just hit $293.8 million in market cap. The XRP ledger is carrying the biggest bag other than Ethereum, Solana, and Polygon, even though they are all in the mix. But the XRP ledger is where institutions are minting and redeeming tokenized T-bills around the clock with RLUSD. Institutional money does not wait for retail to figure it out. It expands. It is great to see the XRP ledger leading so much of this. Ethereum and XRP are obviously the two powerhouses here. Solana has a little bit, and Polygon is barely even worth mentioning. 1 year on the CME, 1.32 million contracts traded, 62.87 billion in notional volume, and 28.66 billion in XRP equivalent traded. Happy birthday, CME Group and XRP futures trading. That is a pretty incredible milestone. Another milestone for the XRP ledger. ZeroCap FX just detailed their work with the Reserve Bank of Australia on Project Acacia, collaborating closely with Ripple to prove that secondary market trading of tokenized government bonds can be executed seamlessly, right on the XRP ledger's native DEX. Real-world asset utility on XRP ledger infrastructure is taking center stage. This is also worth noting that Hedera was mentioned alongside this, but there was also another connection to JP Morgan here, which is exciting. There are going to be more announcements with JP Morgan in the days to come. ZeroCap is proud to have participated in Project Acacia, a landmark pilot led by the Reserve Bank of Australia in collaboration with the Digital Finance Cooperative Research Centre and a broad group of leading industry participants exploring the future of tokenized financial markets in Australia. What is Project Acacia? Project Acacia is an RBA initiative designed to investigate how tokenized and digital asset infrastructure can enhance settlement efficiency, liquidity, and programmability across Australian capital markets. The pilot brought together financial institutions, market infrastructure providers, and digital asset specialists to test 3 capabilities under real-world conditions, not theoretical models. ZeroCap's role covered the end-to-end tokenized bond lifecycle. As part of the pilot, ZeroCap worked closely with Ripple's decentralized exchange, which was the first DEX ever built in the crypto space, to demonstrate the complete life cycle of a tokenized Australian government bond digital twin on blockchain infrastructure. The workflow covered issuance and minting of a digital twin of the bond on-chain, secondary trading by executing transfers via Ripple's DEX, redemption by settling maturity events on blockchain rails, and stablecoin settlement using programmable digital cash for atomic real-time payment finality. This end-to-end demonstration validated that tokenized sovereign debt instruments can be issued, traded, and settled entirely on digital infrastructure with full auditability and programmability at every single stage. The key findings from the RBA's final Project Acacia report reinforce what ZeroCap believes will become one of the defining structural shifts in global capital markets over the coming decade: the tokenizing of real-world assets and the convergence of traditional finance with digital asset infrastructure. The goals here were to create settlement efficiency by moving from T+0 to near-instant atomic settlement, improve liquidity mobility by enabling 24/7 secondary market access and programmable repo arrangements, embed programmability through coupon payments, compliance logic, and redemption triggers directly into the asset, enhance transparency through on-chain auditability for regulators, custodians, and counterparties, and improve market accessibility by lowering minimum participation thresholds and expanding investor reach. It is so incredible to see all of these developments unfolding. Thank you so much for showing up, learning, and growing every single day. It is an absolute honor. Have a fantastic day. Aloha.